Okay, good afternoon. Guess I'm standing between you and lunch. So it's good that I have been given only 15 minutes to make this presentation. Uh, the there is it will be, and thank you for to Rising Asia Foundation and BCCI for this invitation for the ability for me to come back here. As Rajat said, this was my parents' home for several years, and I had the opportunity to visit Calcutta many times. So what I'm going to say is going to be complementary to a lot of what has been said, but I'm going to try to perhaps give you a different perspective. And yes, Harish, I will talk about what the beyond means. Okay. So I'll talk a little bit about the historical context of Bengal, the decline, the new opportunities, some of which have been talked about. I'll talk about, looking to Asia, the rising Asia, talked about the strengths of looking at West Bengal and the Northeast region together, and how we can reintegrate the region and how we can leverage the strengths. Right? That's now the history part. This audience does not need much reminding, but certainly it's something that William Dalrymple has reminded us recently with the Golden Road about the very strong linkages. Of course, the eastern ones were much better known. The western ones were not so well known, but I think he has now reminded us about that. The history, the sources of thought leaders, the capital of British India till 1912, the connectivity trail, the coastal access that is now being resurrected, with Chittagong, Vizag links, and one of the first, the prime actor in British India, the Bengal presidency. So there's early industrialization, and then perhaps also deindustrialization after that. Okay, now you've heard a lot of talk about, and I'm not negating what has all been said, right? But the plain facts are the share of West Bengal in India's GDP has halved from 12% to today. The latest figure is 5.6%, right? That's the share in India's GDP. Very similar story for the Northeast region. It has grown less than the rest of India, right? And a lot of it has to do with the poor connectivity and hard international borders of the Northeast region after the partition of India. And I'm not putting a dampener. You've heard that things may indeed be changing now, right? So what are the new opportunities that are emerging? Well, of course, we've talked about China plus one. The world is searching for new sources of supply. One thing that has not been mentioned is the growing servicification of manufacturing, okay? And what do I mean by that? That more and more of what you consider to be a manufacturing product actually has a very strong services content in it. It could be from 1/3 to 1/2 even, right? If you count properly all the services. So this is part of the servicification. In fact, even in agriculture, there is more and more services inputs. And there is a reason why I'm telling you this. There is also increasing connectivity in the region that reduces isolation and allows strengths that were latent because of your isolation, allowing those strengths to re-emerge. India's Act East policy, a lot has been said, and then the growth of Asia. So these are all the new opportunities that are emerging. Some of them have emerged, right? So Horace Greeley in the New York Tribune in the 19th century used to say, "Go west, young man." Well, I don't think that is the case anymore. It is the Asian century. We're already in it. Barack Obama, I would like a little, I'm getting a lot of resonance back from the audience. So I'm having trouble hearing myself talk. Thanks. So it is the Asian, so Barack Obama talked about the pivot to Asia, right? India and South Asia are the fastest growing. India is the fastest growing large economy in the world, and the South Asian region is the fastest growing sub-region in the entire world. Has been so for many years now. Yeah. So there are opportunities in South Asia, the Bay of Bengal region, and more broadly in South Asia. So if we modify this and make it more politically correct, the statement it would be go east, young people. Okay. So what are the strengths of West Bengal and the Northeast, right? So I'm looking at these as one entity. And this is what I'm going to say is complementary to what you've heard from people like Dr. Amit Mitra and all my previous colleagues who've spoken. Because I want to put a bit of a different spin on things, on what should be a little different. So there is the growing share of services. The services sector in the West Bengal economy, it has grown, and the secondary sector, which includes industry and manufacturing, has declined, right? Same is true in Northeast region. Services sector has grown. The human resources of West Bengal, I don't need to say more. Very eloquently, Dr. Mitra has spelled that out. There is no doubt that is a latent growth potential right there, sitting right there. The female labor force participation, again, previous panels, we spoke about that. But it is actually much better in the Northeast region than in the rest of India, right? Simple figures, if you look at in the secondary sector, the share of women is 35% in Northeast India, and it's only 21% in overall India. In the Northeast, the proficiency in the English language, 4 out of the top 5 states in the rankings for English are in the Northeast, okay? And there is potential of high-value agriculture, which is, pristine, organic without having to be certified organic. Of course, Sikkim is certified organic, but that's, the others are also very highly organic. And there is the traditional agriculture in West Bengal, right? And then there is the location and development, the potential of logistics in West Bengal to serve the entire region. And this is what I want to place before you. It should be seen in that holistic way, okay? And more broadly is the knowledge economy, right? So I think that's what Dr. Mitra, Rajat hinted at that a little bit. So connectivity thrust is helping the region to become a more coherent space. I'm not going to go into that because Mandakini spoke a lot about it, but this is a very big thrust. There is an exponential increase in the kind of effort that the government of India is putting in and the state governments are putting in, both in the Northeast, rails, roads, airports, so many new airports. We used to live in Shillong. With my parents, there was no airport. Now there's an airport in Shillong, all kinds of things. So waters, the softer measures on which I will have more to say. But the point here I want to leave you with is connectivity is helping the sub-region to develop its coherence as a space which had been rendered infructuous after 1947, after 1965, and after 1971. These 3 sort of breaks in the sub-region. So what can be done to capitalize on the strengths, right? So I think to complement what Dr. Mitra said, right? So you leverage location and geography, because geography, it may not quite be destiny, as many economists have said, but it's certainly darn close to that, okay? And there Bengal is really, really fortunate, is its location, right? And a close eye on the sub-region. Now I want to get into some specifics, right? Let's think about the medical sector, nursing, and an open internal labor market to enable optimal leverage of regional skills. And I speak to open internal labor market because we know very often, even though we are one country, even more so after GST, but in fact, there have been more dissonances in the labor market where different states have said, Maharashtra for Maharashtrians and this and that. And so, many others. I'm not singling out Maharashtra only. There are many others which we are one country. We need to be one labor market to optimally use the resources that are there to go from shortages, from sectors which people move in a seamless way. In fact, nay, they should be encouraged to move so that as a country, we can capitalize on our strengths. So let me give a concrete example, the hub and spoke model. We've done some work when I was in the World Bank on this, and I'll give you a reference at the end. Hub and spoke model for medical services for Northeast region and Bangladesh. Kolkata is the hub, Guwahati is the sub-hub, and Agartala is the sub-hub, right? These are, so you have first referrals, second referrals, and then you have, so that requires two things, seamless connectivity, air, rail, road, but it also requires an internal labor market to function really well. Delivery of digital services, Rajat spoke about the importance of digital connectivity, but here, again, the skills come into the picture. Because you have the ability, so you can have education, music, films, scientific research, all of that, can we first start with digital deliveries, and then you can make them into offline services as well. And develop, so it's not just focusing on connectivity, but focusing on connectivity to develop the logistics value proposition of this region, of Kolkata, of Haldia, for the broader region, for the Northeast, for Nepal, for Bhutan, and for Bangladesh, for transit trade, for catalyzing regional value chains. And for this, we need to focus on soft connectivity. Again, Mandakini spoke a lot about that, so I'm not going to repeat that. But one thing I want to say is operationalization of this so-called BBIN, the Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal Motor Vehicles Agreement. A lot of work needs to be done there. Bhutan has dropped out for the moment, so it's BBN for the moment. And then the encouraging of FDI and domestic investment in the Northeast region. And I think in this case, Japan is a very important player in this, can be, in this process, both from an infrastructure point of view, but also from a private sector investment point of view. And, you know, I have great hopes for this whole Matarbari port project that is coming up. Now, somebody asked a question earlier about Bangladesh. I think it's absolutely critical for this region, you know, for this whole Act East policy to work. You can forget about Act East policy working without Bangladesh, okay? And this whole political game, Bangladesh is waking up. It's had 15 years of a certain kind of rule. It's now in a new space. Give it time. It's a revolution that has taken place, a monsoon revolution. It takes time for them to find their feet again. And I mean, don't look at me. I lived for 3 years in Bangladesh, okay? I have deep affection for the quality of the people, the human resources, and their critical role, right? So we shouldn't get kind of swayed by what we hear in the kind of media spaces that we have. So the role for Bangladesh, it's a market, it's a connector for Northeast and for the sub-region. It is an investor. In fact, it is the most important investor for the Northeast. Nobody else, when that was isolated, still is relatively isolated. Bangladesh is interested. I visited factories of Bangladeshi companies in the Northeast, right? So it is a destination for FDI, but also creation of regional value chains. So we need to deepen those interconnections, not say that, okay, now we got to stop them. I don't understand why we have stopped visas for Bangladeshis. Okay, you've seen the new market people are, much less shopping is going on because of that. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is this is a symbiotic relationship. We are the only neighbor that Bangladesh has. India is not going anywhere. Bangladesh is not going anywhere. It's a win-win. It's a symbiotic relationship, and it needs to be nurtured. For Act East to work, it needs to be nurtured. So my concluding thoughts are, in the last minute of my allotted 15, is the emphasis on the new growth poles for both West Bengal and the Northeast, the strength in services and the human resources to develop them. You have that, right? Education, medicine, again, looking at the region as a coherent, don't forget the Northeast, fantastic human resources in certain areas, right? Medical services is a win-win. Nursing, the feeder and hub model, the logistics, developing logistics as a service to transport and transit goods to Calcutta. And then the high-value agriculture and the unique products in high-value agriculture which the Northeast is very, very strong in, okay? In horticulture, in spices and so on. And, we've done studies on that. I will tell you about those in a minute. And more broadly is the thrust on the knowledge economy. That's where I think we're going here with all what the Dr. Mitra spoke about. And he didn't sort of quite connect the dots and say it, but I'm saying it. I'm certainly quite hopeful about the possibilities of creating a knowledge economy, which is where the productivity, the innovation, the wage increases, all that he talked about, those are going to come about. So all of this complements the ongoing developments that we've heard a lot about the manufacturing development, and I'm not knocking that. We need to keep that going because of the many reasons that Nidhi spoke about. But this is complementary, and it's also the future. And for that future to work, remember, I come back to my very important point, what I think is the internal labor market. We need to encourage that, keep that going, because that's where shortages develop, people move, and they reduce those shortages, right? So that's one is through migration, one is through bringing more women into the workforce. And let's not forget one other kind of trade that has happened, beginning to happen, is the electricity trade. Right? Bhutan, India has been happening forever. But one very interesting thing happened is Nepal, India, Bangladesh. India facilitated the export of 40 megawatts of energy from Nepal to Bangladesh via India. That's a very important development. That's sort of the sub-regional electricity market which we need to develop. So here are some resources, the World Bank things. Mandakini mentioned one of them. But there's other things. There's papers on regional investment in South Asia that I did with my colleagues from the bank. There's also a paper on playing to strengths, a policy framework for Northeast India. And we also have a book on unleashing e-commerce for South Asia integration, which I think is also relevant. So thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Kathuria, and it was really insightful and indeed worthy of a leadership talk. One gentleman who has been instrumental in getting both the Kathuria brothers here today in Calcutta, Dr. Harish Mehta, if I may request you to kindly come up on the dais and do the honors for Dr. Sanjoy Kathuria, please. This time, please face the camera.